6.
Bongani.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks,
carry
Sabelo.
on, carry on, sure.
Yes, I was about the discussion of the future that I uploaded Kwame Nkrumah to champion. Kwame Nkrumah defined Africa as to where should we go. I think he envisioned an Africa that will achieve unity at the end. But he had instruments in between that will push us to that unity. Within, I think there was development, and that's how he envisioned this African unity. And of course, he stated quite a number of things: the command, the army command, building of finance sector, etc. And he alerted us on the neoliberalism, neocolonialism. He was seeing the future. If you go to Kwame Nkrumah all the time, I want to push to young people today, those that are here, that let's try and push our discussions to that of the future. Immediately the generation after Kwame Nkrumah, including our generation, we are so obsessed with the past. It brings currency to be a populist. It gives currency to be seen smart, probably, amongst our communities. As a result, it's easy because you can claim it, not necessarily to define your character as a leader in a community. The generations after Nkrumah, all those who managed to liberate their colonial states, the so-called countries of the continent, all of them, they shout slogans. All those slogans are drawn from the archives of the past. Now, you are asking us what needs to be done. I am saying we must define the future. We must, I heard some of you guys saying, we are not commemorating this, and I can tell you, I'm 44 years old. I've seen so much commemorations, and I don't even attend them sometimes. Yeah, there's so many of them. We do best in that. Now, coming to the realities, in line to what Nkrumah was trying to alert us on, was that we need a capital. We need to build capital for Africans. I'm telling you, we are on the periphery. If you are on the periphery, unfortunately, there's not a single program that you can achieve. You will end up being unable even to just put your boots on. It's just impossible if you are sitting on the periphery. Now, when you talk of capital, I understand you guys most of the time. In the African context, we tend to concentrate the most on the culture. That is important, it's part of capital. We need to build a cultural capital. We need to build a social capital. We need to build an economic capital. But what is at core that kills us as Africans, that makes the African continent not to survive, to be a terrain, to be a consumerist market for the big markets, is because our issues are systematic. Now, adding to you thinking of the future as young people, you need to view the systems. You must challenge the systems. I'm going to bring just one system. Of course, there's a political system that is exploited already, because we have people who are pushing slogans who cannot define the future. Therefore, it's easy for those people to be bought in and lead political slogans and so forth and become populist. And they lead our communities in our countries, in the African continent, probably somewhere in diaspora too. So we put aside the politics to find ways on how that can be sorted out. But if in dealing with systems now, there's one core system that if we can deal with it, we can somehow be better off, that is finance. Young people are shy to talk about finance. Young people are shy to discuss finance. I'm not talking accounting here, I'm talking finance, the system. That's where our problems are. Now, going forward, as we have these colonial states that became having independence, we have all innovations, financial involvement, finance getting to power. You talk of financial repression, the hegemony of finance taking charge. We have stooges that are presidents in this continent that are driven by finance. Now I'm saying young people, you have to interrogate this system. Now we went on to from financial repression. When we started to say goodbye to it, we get to a democracy deficit. A democracy deficit now where all our countries are operating on debt. There is no way we run a nation, a household, a business on debt. A business that is high leverage is in the hands of creditors. It is not your business. You are employed by those that you owe them. Now, those are the things that young people have to interrogate them. Now, what I've noticed with young people cutting across the continent in Africa and particularly in South Africa, they've regressed as far as education is concerned. I mean, I give a typical example. The education had by people like Governor Mbeki, that of economics, finance, etc. The politicians of our today, young people, I will give an example. Who's is the current young people that are in politics, some in my generation. You just don't understand what they studied at school. They just can't. This discussion on finance, on economics, it requires consultants for them to engage on it. And that is not supposed to be the case. I challenge young people. We have to deal with issues that matter. Issues that matter is finance, is the configuration of finance. Now, when you graduate from the democracy deficit, we have the debt trap now. Now, again, is colonization over colonization. African people, Pan-Afrikanism, it's a dream, it's a pipe dream if we have no means to control and run programs. And we will be able to do that if we interrogate the financial systems. Because now, as things stand, we are even trapped at our households because the financial system, it pushes consumerization. Yeah? It pushes consumerization to a point that households, you will end up not owning your kids. I mean, you have no right on your kids because you're so much trapped. Those are the systems that we have. Now, we need to relook at these things as young people, as we complain, as we try and build a culture, as we try and do all sorts of things, think of social media and so forth and so forth. But comrades, we have to look at these models. And unfortunately, they require us to ban the oil. We have to ban the candles. We must ban the oil, young people. We must do the things that matter. Systems. We have to be systems thinkers. And we must be systems thinkers that, of course, mobilize the grassroots. Currently, all young people that are in politics, they have no real understanding of finance. Most of young people that are in politics, those that are in finance, they are in finance within the system. The current system is not kind. It is not kind. Those that understand the Fordism, I mean, the mass production in the US, with the security of labor in the US, and where are we supposed to push this mass production? This mass production must be pushed to us. We follow fashions. We follow all sorts of things that are irrelevant, that are pushing consumerization. And we come and complain and say, it requires us as young people to move out of the comfort and understand that we have to challenge these systems. Through you, Sabelo, these systems that I'm talking about, you don't throw stones to them. Unlike the 1976 Soweto Uprising, you ban the oil, you ban the candle, you study. You study things that matter. Pan-Afrikanism, Krumah explained it very well. It's a futuristic view. You must see the systems that are going to attack societies. You must mobilize within a framework of a system. This mobilization that comes out of a blue, social media, etc., that doesn't have a core framework is not going anywhere. It is not going anywhere, comrades. Let's try and find ways to deal with systems. Finance is one system that I'm saying I'm challenging all of you. Let's look at the finance because that's where we are captured. Thank you very much, Sabelo. I'm sorry if I
Thank you.
much, but young people, that you look at those things. Let's ban the candles. Let's ban the oil.
Thanks a lot, Bongani, for that. Thank you. I hope the young people are listening. Young people. Yeah, sure. You have a right to respond to what we have said, by the way.
Can I?
Yeah, carry on, Brother Martin. Carry on, Martin. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have listened carefully to the contributions, and it's someone I know and someone who I'm aware has great talent. But the complaint I heard earlier is correct, that there have been extensive discussions on what has happened, how we feel about what's happened, and what we're not going to do about what has happened. Been extensive discussions. I am concerned with action. Now at age 60, I've been in the struggle for more than 45 years, okay? More than 45 years. So there are lessons I've learned in life with my 8 children. And there's a lesson that is really important for young people to take on board. That is, I want you to get married. First step, must get married. Yeah, form a bond. Yeah, that's the first step. The unit of any civilization is the man and woman, the marriage, that family. The family unit is the basis. Must get married. Secondly, it's simple, huh? Very, very simple. Secondly, it's important for the families to collaborate. And for the children to see the adults collaborating. So the collaborating, working together, is a natural extension when they become teenagers and adults. The challenge that we have right now is not, far too many families have not collaborated. And therefore, when you gain adulthood, you're asked to collaborate with people for whom you have no natural bond. And it's interesting to observe those who have been brought up in an African-centric household, where you could tell the way they speak, okay? And the desire for collaboration is natural. And those who've been brought up in households which are dominated by, I use the term, consumers, where you just simply work to buy and simply to live, but not to build. So to go back to the beginning, if you get married early, I encourage you to get married early, okay? Form bonds, and for the children to see you collaborating. Yeah, very, very basic, very, very basic. Because, let's take it further. What I've heard today is a desire for action. And I always say to people, well, look, I'm all about action, but are you disciplined? Because organization requires discipline. It requires the acceptance of roles, chairman, treasurer, and so on. It requires, if you've been assigned a task, for you to be committed to follow through on that task. Mistake again, because it's very often is missed. If you've been assigned a task, that you are committed to follow through on the task. Why is that critical? Because even here, I'm hearing of completely new organizations. Completely new organizations. And I say to you, and it's said by Sabelo, we have thousands of organizations in the community, literally thousands of organizations. Yeah, we do not need more organizations. What we need is for those organizations to coalesce. The reason why they haven't coalesced is because the individuals who started them have not brought up into the tradition of collaboration, working together, making mistakes, but still working together to understand the mistakes and learn and grow together. That's what it is. That's why we have so many organizations. So we have to arrest that obvious fault line. So I'm going to make this extension to you, Sabelo.
Yes, my
For the
brother.
life of me, I don't understand why you have a free version of Zoom, and when you have direct connection with the Global Afrikan Congress, that's where we both met, through the Global Afrikan Congress, and Glenn Roy, and RMT, yeah. And within the Global Afrikan Congress, we offer a copy of Zoom to all networked organizations, so you can have a 4-hour meeting uninterrupted. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that you and our officer group, but I'm a trustee of the Global Afrikan Congress. I'll make sure that for your next meeting, the copy of Zoom that we have is made available to you. You've got a time slot, let's say a 4-hour time slot today, for example, next week, and we'll make sure that you no longer have those interruptions. And that's collaboration. It's resources we pull together, we can make it available to the next person. And that extension to the further collaboration and the young people from PACM Center. Where are you? I can't see them. Are they still here? They're not here now. Oh, I can't see them anymore. Oh, well, no, Mahat Center, an important center, which is currently under threat. It's under threat because the community has failed to financially support the center. It's a wholly owned center by the African community here in Britain, okay? But it has a finance arrangement on it. And in order for the center to continue, we've got to financially support it. Now, there are thousands of African organizations in Britain, okay? In theory, that center's future is assured, but currently it's under threat because the principal collaboration hasn't fully embedded in the so-called Pan-Afrikanist movement. I say so-called because by virtue of that name, Pan-Afrikanist means that you are collaborating, but clearly that collaboration has not extended far enough. If we lose the Mahat Center, my generation, absolutely would have failed. Okay, and I would have to, each time I see a young person, I'd have to bow to you, and apologize to you. Okay, Thomas, and apologize to you. Okay, because we should do better. Yeah, we should do better as elders and set examples to you. Okay, and it may well be that it is the young people that will save that center. And I'd have to bow to you again and apologize that we didn't do a better job. Okay. My third part of my contribution, is the further solutions. So I talked about the intimate solution that the boys and girls, forgive me, from my perspective, at 60 years old, the young people I see here, if you are not married, I want to encourage you to marry quickly, okay? Because I found in my other hat, you're laughing, huh? It's serious.
No,
I found in my
sorry to interrupt you, Elder.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Sorry to interrupt you. You know, I would like to get married, and I'm sure my sister would like to get married too, and that is the plan. And that is something that we wish to do. I agree, it is important to have the foundation to start your family up. So, but there might be other people on the platform young people that are married. So.
Well, I'm sure that they will speak up soon enough. Don't you worry. I'm pleased by that. Don't you worry. But it's important. It's important for young people, as young as possible, to get married. You have the support of your families, and if not, the wider African community. Okay, really important, because that is the foundation of our civilization. Okay, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It is our foundation. Okay, I've just got to go to my last solutions. That of course, the control capital, has been said, is mission critical. One of the reasons why there are so many organizations is because they are generally very poor. And I mean poor in capital, they're usually poor in wisdom as well, but it's generally very poor. Some of them last quite some time, where the individual, one or two usually one, has a very strong character and is able to carry the organization, in some cases for 2, 3, 4 decades. But when they no longer can cope, then the organization dies. Okay, that is poor planning. From a strategic perspective, that's extremely poor planning and ensures failure for that community. That experience must stop. But in order to stop those experiences, we have got to coalesce. So, as I said, I belong to the Global Afrikan Congress. We invite the young people, I'm sure, or if I give you the URL, you'll go to it just like that, which is the GACuk.org.uk. Okay, I'll put it in the chat so you've got it. Okay, I would encourage you, it's only £10 for a year to sign up. Okay, but you'll be amongst a network of African organizations who wish to work collaboratively. Okay, and without collaboration, what Sabelo is attempting here is not possible. Because if the lesson we learned from the Soweto, and I recall being a teenager and being a part of the many marches here in London, okay, is that our continent, my continent, and I'm from the Caribbean, I'm the classic diasporian, okay, who can only see the land of milk and honey, which is the motherland of Africa, yeah, with a K, of Africa. That's how I see it. But, but the reality on the ground, though, the reality on the ground is that it is the most diverse, the most complex, and the most challenging continent in the world, because it is the cradle of humankind. More languages are spoken, more cultures to be found there, more traditions are to be found there. And therefore, in order for us to find coalescence, we've got to be much more acceptance of our diversity, and not allow religious doctrine or cultural doctrine to divide them, because through division, others have been able to rule us. And for this little island where I'm on, of Britain, which is off the coast of mainland Asia, what they call this part of Asia, Europe, okay? Note, Europe is an integral part of Asia. It's not a separate continent, okay? Very important. Another one of the psychological the tricks they play with you. It's just an island off the coast of Asia. This part of Asia is called Europe, okay? Very, very important. And it's important for me to define it, because we take control of the language, okay? And we take control of the vision, the visually part of the propaganda that we're exposed to. And if once we understand that we can control it, we're able to move forward and create our own plans. So this little island could control the second largest continent in the world. So there must be lessons for us. Well, certainly with lessons for me when I observed Soweto, a small group of Euro-Asians could be in my motherland, have such control of our motherland and that part of my mother continent that we, at some point, I saw such horrors being committed, as is still the case in the United States of America. Okay? I saw such horrors, and I was motivated at that time to promise myself that it would not happen to my generation ever again. Okay, so I was resolved with that, which is why I got married early, which is why I had children, which is why I gave up time and all the very little leisure time, but it's all for the children. This is why I'm a member of the Global Afrikan Congress. This is why I entered politics, to be able to defend our interest here in Britain. This is why I'm speaking to you today. So it's a series of definite steps, and once you're clear about those steps, you must follow through. And be clear that you will make mistakes, both your partners and you will make mistakes, but you've got to accept the fact you will make those mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and move forward together. I'll rest there.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I see we've got someone here called Dada, and then we've been joined by Busiso Kumalo and Inzinga Rose. I don't know if you want to make any contribution on anything for those people that I've just mentioned now. And then there is iPhone Samuel as well. If you'd like to come in there and say something, please do indicate that you would like to. Thanks a lot for those contributions from the elders. Definitely, I agree with Mbongani on the aspect of being futuristic. It's important to conceptualize what we perceive as the kind of future that we want, and therefore be able to guide our present actions informed by that particular future that we want. But the most important thing therefore becomes as well how we as the African nation begin to have this concept of a collective future. Because one of the things that has been killing us is that we have our own ideas of what the future should look like. And many a time, the idea of what the future should look like is informed by our own organizations more than being informed by the needs of the nation and by the needs of the motherland. So I think one of the things that I loved a lot, I'll keep going back to what you were saying about the importance of a hub, that once you have this collaboration as young people, once you have this hub that you are able to basically talk to each other around, then you will be able to begin to talk a language that informs the direction that you see for the African nation going forward. Which is why you find that even the theme for today, African youth acting now, shaping the unity and the future of the global African nation. Because if we cannot have you as young people participating in the shaping of the future, we'll have, like now we have the African Union deliver to us what it calls Vision 2063. I don't know who amongst us here was part of that process in as far as consulting as to what 2063 should be like. Next thing is sold to us as the Africa we want. But who said that that's the Africa that I want? Because I never made an input to that. And the one person I have met who made an input to that process was able to say, we had a meeting in the southern part of Africa. We were in, I think they met in Lesotho or something. From there, we moved to the east. From there, we moved to the west. We moved to the same group of people. The consultation was only different in as far as the location is concerned, but it's the same people moving from one place to the other and basically coming back and saying this is the vision we have for taking Africa forward. So, my brother, Martin, I hear you and I really appreciate what you're saying about GAC offering its platform. I'll wait to hear more from you on that particular aspect as regards how that works itself out. I honestly have no issues at all about collaboration. And I wasn't aware actually that the aspect pertaining to the reparations meetings or the global meetings that Elder Glenroy normally does on Sundays or on GAC platform. I thought it was RMT that was sponsoring that particular platform, but it's good to know that it's a GAC platform. And if you can facilitate a process whereby we can have access to such spaces and such platforms, good and fine. Let's definitely see how we collaborate going forward, I honestly don't have a problem, which is why we've opened this platform to see how we can collaborate. And one of the things that I'll be posting up, maybe I'll just put it on the chat now, and then we'll also look at it again when we are closing, with the directory of Pan-Afrika, where we are basically saying that organizations can sign up on the directory and be able to find each other, and therefore be able to collaborate, where you don't lose your autonomy, you don't lose your identity, you don't lose anything, but you are able to look at the directory and say, okay, maybe we want to do work in Nigeria, we want to do work in Ghana, in Tanzania, wherever, Jamaica. You look at the directory and say, oh, okay, in my area of interest, there is this organization and that organization. Let me see how I can begin to have a relationship and begin to collaborate with that particular organization. Because one of the things that is affecting us as African people, in the multiplicity of organizations that we have, there is very little in as far as collaborating and knowing who is doing what where. On the contrary, we almost like, we've got this market mentality, as I basically call it, that you go to our markets, especially, if today I see my neighbor selling tomatoes and is doing really well with tomatoes, even though I'm selling bananas, I want to give up on my bananas and start selling tomatoes as well. The next thing, the next person also wants to sell tomatoes. The next thing, you've got 10 people all selling the same thing and competing for the same market. Whereas what we are saying is that let's begin to broaden this particular collaboration. And I'm glad to hear the young people talk about it. And also the aspect as regards finances. We need to begin to create an African economy. Bongani captured it really well about the importance of addressing that issue of finance. That is one of the crippling aspects, and Martin also spoke to it, about how we have these organizations coming up, but they don't have the resources to run through and complete their projects. One of the reasons being that we don't have an African economy. And when I talk about an African economy, I read something recently that in the US, they are actually putting together plans to make sure that Africans support African businesses. But what we are also saying, particularly those of us on the continent, is that as against us on the continent having to deal with European businesses, let's deal with African businesses in the United States, in Europe and the UK, wherever. Because the tendency is that a lot of people now, as long as they are doing business in Africa, that is enough. But as to what economy that money is circulating in, no one really cares to see behind that particular aspect. And what we are saying is, let's begin to understand how a collective global African nation economy looks like. And this is where you as young people can come in and be of great assistance, because now you even talk about things called cryptocurrency and all these things. Some of us cannot readily relate to what that means, but you guys understand it. You guys understand the technology. You guys understand how to link things up and link people up, and therefore be able to take the whole process forward. And what we're basically saying now is that in as much as you're talking about these hubs, it is very, very important that within the concept of the hub, you know exactly how to network, you know exactly how to link, you know exactly how to utilize that collective energy to be able to take us forward as a nation. Because that is one of the things that is missing right now, the ability to think and reason as a nation, and therefore be able to come up with solutions that speak to us as a nation. In as much as, yes, the global Pan-African movement has a very catchy slogan which goes, think globally, act locally. We have to think globally, but we have to act locally. But now, some of our people have come to a point where we act locally and we think locally. Or we want to act globally and we want to think globally, but we have no presence within the immediate vicinity of where we are as African people. And that is one of the dangers of this technology. I think it was Thomas earlier who mentioned the fact that we talk so much now using these gadgets, using this technology that we have, but that face-to-face is absolutely necessary, it's absolutely important. And I see that Martin has also posted the link for the GAC UK. Please feel free to visit that particular link because it's most critical that we begin to exchange information about the organizations that are out there and therefore be able to inform the collaborations that will be able to take us forward as a people. We are left with 2 more minutes, and my thinking is that we have covered a lot of what needs to be done and the solutions and everything like that. We have, what I would suggest is that we end on this session, and then in the next session, we give ourselves maybe 10 or so minutes just simply to capture what the takeaways from this discussion have been. I would not be happy with a scenario where we just part ways and we leave it hanging in the air. I would like for us in the next session, we're not going to take the entire 40 minutes. We might need maybe 10, 15 minutes or so, for especially the young people to be able to speak to some of the issues that have been tabled, and then we come up with a clear program of action, so to say, to address the concerns that you've come up with. Then we know that we have some tangible takeaways from what we have been talking about. At least we know that even when we are preparing for the commemoration of June 16 again next year, we already have people who are active on the ground and moving forward in these particular aspects that we're talking about. So it will cut off. Please sign back on the same link, and then we just round off and finish our discussion on that particular aspect. Okay, I'll just end it because it's just showing a couple of seconds left now.